Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. Today we are going to do the ratings and reviews tag. I think several months delayed here. I'm so behind on tags. This one was created by the very lovely Scott and Nell from Gunpowder Fiction and Plots, and I was tagged specifically by Indian Cooks and Books, who has disappeared again, and Nikki's Books as well, I think. So I will link all those channels down below. And the first prompt is to tag people. So this has gone around a lot. So I tried to come up with a couple of channels that are small booktubers that are kind of not as connected with the particular corner of booktube that has done this. So I'm going to tag Keep Calm with Books and Coffee. This is someone I've followed for quite a long time, and she rebranded her channel this year, so this is a new name for her. Percy Does Everything. If you like cats, definitely check out. Bookmark Chronicles is kind of newer to me, but really enjoying the content, very analytical. So I think that's who I will tag. Again, I will link those down below. You should check them out. They're small booktubers. Definitely great channels. So I've been ruminating on these questions because I have seen so many videos doing them, but I haven't actually spent time going through all the questions in detail. So this is going to be very rambly and off the cuff. Question number 2 is, how do you know you've finished a good book? Is it a thinking or a feeling response? I do not approach completing a book with any specific criteria. So I would say both. I think when I finish a book, I am generally thinking about what effect it had on me, whether that is thinking or feeling. Was it the intended effect of the author? Was I angry about things? I'm thinking about that because of a particular book that I'm reading right now. And I'm often thinking about how it worked as a whole, which is something I couldn't really assess before completion. So yeah, I'm thinking about how did the elements combine together into a greater whole. Number 3, when you begin to form your review or rating, what is the first question you ask yourself? As to the last one, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, I think. I don't have a specific format, but I do kind of use the elements that go into like call pile when I am really sitting down to think about it, because I go through my initial gut reaction really is first. But then once I've gotten through that and written something down, I will go through and think about, well, did I address characters? Did I address plot? What did the prose look like? What was world building like? Things like that, which I think a lot of times that goes into mainly like fantasy and sci-fi and secondary world stuff, not as much literary fiction, but it still applies in a lot of cases where you can think about how well drawn all of those elements are. So I don't have a specific way I approach it every time. Very often I won't even think about that. I'll just write up what's on my mind at the time and I'm done. I do not script for videos, so when I'm talking about like writing things up, that's for a written review that I would put on Goodreads or other booksellers, that sort of thing. I pretty much fly by the seat of my pants in talking about reviews as well. So when I'm reviewing for videos, I may have bullet points that I've thought if I've got something really important that I want to say. Usually I take some notes, very minimal notes on books, or I will have tabbed things. So I'll read those notes and read through tabs if I've done that on a book, if it's a really dense book, but that's about the extent that goes into preparing. I just purely sit down and talk for the most part. Do you do star ratings? Why or why not? If yes, certain answers. If no, certain answers. So I have to answer both because I do both. On Goodreads, I do use star ratings, and here I actively try to avoid using star ratings because I don't think they're that important. So this has actually, like, my thought process, and I've been ruminating for months on this, really went into making my new monthly wrap-ups. That my first one went up for January. Really, I think, and I don't know if I'm answering the questions here, but I think what people want to know, they want to hear my specific thoughts. And in terms of like a rating, people want to know, did I like it? Did I dislike it? Or did I not really care? Was it meh? And so I think that really is what it boils down to. I don't think I need a star rating to get that across. And I kind of actively dislike the culture of star ratings. So I do use it on Goodreads, as I said. I use it more as a metric for myself. I'm completely out of touch with what a good star rating is on Goodreads. I hear people reference it all the time, and I think it's somewhere in the mid 3s or something. But very often people will say it, and I'm like, doesn't that mean that more than most people liked the book? Yeah, so I don't understand, and I don't really use Goodreads ratings for my own purposes. That's not something I'm interested in checking out when I'm looking into a book. A 1-star review can be just as impactful on me picking up a book as a 5-star. So onto the specifics. So this was, do you do star ratings? Why or why not? If yes, explain your star rating system. What does a good book get in your rating system? So on Goodreads, my star rating system is exactly what they have laid out. I think it's basically like bad, did not like, it was okay, good, very good, and excellent, pretty much. So I use more or less that system. Is your star rating consistent? Are all your 5-star books better than your 4-star books? I don't think so. It's not something where I'm working through metric stuff, but for the most part, I have a clear idea of why something would get a 5-star versus a 4-star, for instance. So a 5-star has to hit all of the elements well that I look for in a book, and also have an emotional impact for me, I think. A 4-star could be something that hit all the elements but didn't have that emotional impact. Or it could be something that had a real fail on one of the elements but had a massive emotional impact. So things like that. I've talked about, I need to make a separate video really for sticky books. So I have a lot of sticky books that hang around in my mind, and I have several of those that it bothers me that they're not 5-stars because they spend so much time in my head and I've thought about them so much, but they have some major element that didn't work. The Body Lies by Jo Baker is a great example of that, where I have spent so much time thinking about this book. It was brilliantly done and crafted, and it also had so much commentary, but it didn't really succeed as a thriller. Like, it's not a great thriller. So the plot didn't execute the way it should have. I think Witcher's Orbit is another book like that, where I don't really feel like it should be a 5-star book necessarily. Like, in terms of talking to other people about it, it's probably not a 5-star book. It's predictable. It's got very expected things, but I think it sought out to do a certain thing that was predictable, and it did that very well, and it happened to be exactly what I needed at the time, so it was a 5-star book for me. So things like that really play into how I rate things on Goodreads. If no, so this is if you don't use star ratings, so in terms of how I talk here where I avoid star ratings. So what language do you use to convey the quality of a book in your reviews? I don't have specific language. So as I said, I'm kind of leaning towards doing that in terms of these new monthly wrap-ups that I'm gonna do. But overall, I'm trying to get across specific thoughts on the themes of the book, on the elements of the book, and let people review those for themselves, and decide if it plays into whether they want it. I tend to like things that on Goodreads might be very polarizing, where somebody saying 1-star, this was weird, what the fuck, is going to maybe make me want to pick that up. And those kind of books that are very polarizing, that have a lot of 1-stars and a few 5-stars, are going to have a really strong reaction with certain readers. And that's the kind of thing that I tend to really get into, versus the books that are, everybody feels okay about it. Does this form an informal rating or ranking? Not really. I would say I don't really rank things or rate things here. I do use ratings here as more of a search engine optimization. So I think that's maybe vocabulary that I use when you have seen review videos go out with a 5-star read on them in the title. What I'm using that is more for search engine, because the people that I want to reach with that are looking for things that say 5-star. And I don't care about communicating that it's a 5-star, other than trying to get information about this book out to those people that probably are not in the usual readership of that book. So I think that's maybe the most interesting thing for me here, is that I actively avoid saying star ratings here because I think they're not particularly useful for this medium. And when I do use them, it's either I've slipped up or I'm specifically targeting a readership that I don't think is going to get to them otherwise. So that may be interesting. Number 5, do you believe every book has its perfect reader? Does this contradict the idea that a book can be bad? I don't know. I mean, yes, a book can be bad. A book can be poorly written. It can be poorly executed. Yes, I think a book can be bad. I think that's in terms of much more objective. But perfect reader, I don't think a book needs to have a perfect reader to exist in the world. A writer can just want to write the book, put it out in the world. We live in a world where that's possible technologically, so there's no barrier to that happening, and people can critique that book for its merits, of course, or for subjective purposes, but I'm not a fan of gatekeeping whether things should exist, and bad books should exist just because the author wanted to write them, and that's fine. In terms of the actual perfect reader, there's a lot of bad books that people really enjoy. If you've met any people who read primarily from Kindle Unlimited, for instance, there's a lot of bad books on there. And there's a lot of bad books that I've heard about that people still had a great time with. So that can be subjective in terms of the quality of writing. It can be in terms of the themes that are explored. I've read some real wonky lit RPG with nasty male gaze and misogyny, and they have massive readership through that program. So yeah, I mean, there is definitely an audience out there for a lot of things that I wouldn't think there should be. But I don't think we need to gatekeep the existence of books, period. What book that you hated have you recommended? That's book number 6. So lots. I don't think just because I didn't like a book doesn't mean other people will not like it. I think being a person who thinks critically about books and can understand other people's taste, I should be able to recommend books I didn't like to others. I think specifically, if you're looking for examples, I really hated Muse of Nightmares, and I've recommended that to people. I really, really hated Nalini Singh's Guild Hunters, but I have recommended that to people. Both of them were not for me, but that doesn't mean they're not for every reader. Number 7, what makes a book good, bad, or great by your evaluation? I can't specify. I think a lot of people have talked about execution, whether or not it's carrying out what it meant to do, and I think that is true. I think it also has to be engaging with the reader, whether that's in terms of pulling the reader along with plot or engaging them mentally with themes. I think those are both really, really critically important. When evaluating the quality of a book, do you have a specific criteria or aspects of the book, such as character development, that you consider? Does this change if you're writing an in-depth review versus just thinking about the book for enjoyment? Yes and no. I think writing a review, I have tried to write reviews for every book I read. I have multiple years of that, at least a little bit on Goodreads for past several years, and I have slowly gotten worse and worse about keeping up with that as I've been on BookTube, because I am talking about every book that I read, and that means I do not write about every book that I read anymore. And I think about it the same way regardless of whether I'm planning to write a review or I'm not, because I still am thinking analytically about the book as I'm reading. There's no book that I just purely am in it for entertainment and forget it as soon as I'm done. That just doesn't happen. Like I'm thinking about what the book is trying to do throughout the reading experience and trying to get something out of it, even if it is, a pulpy, entertaining read. So I don't think that changes based on the purpose of the book. And do you consider star ratings or average ratings when choosing books to read and add to your TBR? So I mentioned this kind of earlier. I don't pay attention to the ratings. I look at reviews sometimes. Sometimes I only look at the synopsis. Mostly I'm looking for like buzzwords that really would pull me in, or a line or two here or there that somebody I trust has talked about it and said things about the book that make me interested it doesn't matter to me, again, whether they have a 1-star or a 5-star review, if they say kind of those keywords. I think somebody sold me on the Band series by Nicholas Eames with a negative review because the things they were talking about were very much things that I would enjoy. Number 10, who on BookTube does reliable and interesting reviews of books that you know you can use to decide if a book is for you or not, and what makes their reviews so good? So I think I will try to stay away from people who I kind of have personal connections with, because I think, you know, that obviously weights things. I think Jen Campbell is a good one because she's really into poetry and is a writer herself. So she is very good at breaking down language and breaking down component parts of a book to make a clear distinction about the qualities of the book. I think Willow from Books and Bow, who reads a lot of translated fiction, reads very differently from me, and they get across the enjoyable elements and the ways that they were engaged as a reader, the things that were evocative about the book, really, really well. Russell from Ink and Paper Blog. I think Russell is kind of an outlier because he reads so emotionally, which is very different from me. So I think with him, he is selling me on the emotional impact of the book that he read rather than being so analytical. So he's very different in terms of the reading. And Simon from Savage Reads. I think most people in the BookTube world know Simon or follow Simon, not know him. I don't know Simon. But I think most people trust his reviews because he has been professionally bookish and knows how to present the information about a book. So I think he shares his emotional reaction, but mostly it's an info dump about the qualities of the book. And I think we all enjoy that. And that's why he is so well beloved here. Number 11, does that or those booktubers use different language than you to evaluate and review the overall quality of a book? So I don't know. I'm thinking about those booktubers. I can't even remember if any of them use star ratings or don't use star ratings. So I don't know how they rate books, because that's not something I pay attention to. I'm there for the information about the book. So I honestly couldn't tell you at this point. I'm there to get the actual raw information, the details describing the book, describing the impact of the book on them. I don't so much care about whether or not they say it was a 5-star. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's all the questions that we had. Hopefully I didn't miss any. Yeah, it was an interesting tag. It was really interesting to think about this, and like I said, it inspired some things for me that led to new videos. So very exciting, and I really appreciate Scott and Nell for putting this together off of their previous kind of video essay that they did on rating and reviews. So very, very cool. Thank you all so very much for watching.